Republicans dead. Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay?
The women with the least likelihood of getting pregnant are the ones most worried about having abortions.
On January 6th of 2021, you had tens of thousands of people peacefully protesting.
No, it's not a right-wing conspiracy theory. It's not QAnon. It's real.
I am an enemy of Donald Trump. You're an enemy of Donald Trump. Even if you don't think you're an enemy of Donald Trump, even if you don't know it yet, you're an enemy of Donald Trump. Because the old order that resists Trump, resists authoritarianism, resists this long slide into darkness and evil and chaos and authoritarianism, whether the criticisms of Trump now are mild or stark, you're an enemy of Trump. And in the last few days, Trump has become more and more and more comfortable with telling Americans the enemy within must be taken out. He's become more and more comfortable with saying he's going to use the military and the National Guard to go after his political enemies. Not enemies from without, but enemies within. In fact, Trump, even his most hated group, as you know, are immigrants. But now he's even saying, oh, these people are more dangerous than the illegal immigrants coming to America. You know, people tell us over and over again, take Trump seriously, but not literally. And people say, oh, he's a showman. He's just a campaigner. It's all a show for the rubes. It's not. Trump is a frank, outright, utter fascist now. He's not playing around anymore. You think he's just senile, and he is senile. He's got dementia. But he is surrounded by people who, if they are given the slightest opportunity, will put this into action. His most fervent, crazy people supporters, they hear this stuff. And you know what they hear? Marching orders. They don't hear Trump engaging in rhetoric. They don't hear Trump playing around. They don't hear Trump like showing off for the crowd. They hear marching orders. How do we know? January 6th. He didn't use the words, go violently attack the Capitol, but he said, we're going to march down there and take our country back. That's the gift of rhetoric. You don't have to say the explicit word to make the violent action occur. Adolf Hitler never came out and said, march the Jews into train cars and ship them off to extermination camps. And yet, it happened. And you think to yourself, oh, how dare you exaggerate? That's so much, or that's so hyperbolic. When you have the nominee of the Republican Party in the year of our Lord 2024 saying he's going to use the military and the National Guard to arrest his political enemies, you should take it seriously. When you have his allies out there at events like the Rod of Iron conference this weekend, and if you look up Rod of Iron, you'll find it's Christian nationalism, gun culture, and revenge culture. There's a guy named Ivan Ralkin. You've probably never heard of Ivan Ralkin, but he's a big deal in the sort of right-wing media ecosystem and the sort of activist culture. He calls himself Trump's Secretary of Retribution. And he's out there saying that he's ready to kill people. This weekend, Michael Flynn, who is suing me for $10 million still. This weekend, Michael Flynn was asked by a guy in an audience, are you, hang on, I'll read it to you. Is there any chance, he's asked this question, is there any chance that should the election go in a positive result, you would get your rank reinstated and sit at the head of a military tribunal, not only to drain the swamp, but imprison the swamp, and on a few occasions, execute the swamp? And Flynn, even Flynn sort of caught the vibe and was careful. But what he said at the end, we win and then it's Katie bar the door. Okay? Believe me, the gates of hell, my hell, will be unleashed. I'm going to go back to that line, execute the swamp. It's a broad term, sounds amorphous, the swamp. But again, remember what I said at the top. You may not be his enemy yet, but you will be his enemy. Authoritarians never stop with the one or two guys they didn't like growing up. It's a great story. When Saddam Hussein took power in Iraq back in the late 70s, he calls together all the leadership of the Ba'ath Party into a big auditorium. They don't know what's happening. And he says, I will call your names. And when I call your names, you must stand up, recite the oath of the Ba'ath Party, and then walk out of the room. It took a couple guys for that to happen before they realized those people were being taken away to be killed. And it never stopped. Part of what authoritarians do over and over and over again is threaten and implement violence against their political enemies, their political challengers, their political opposition. There is no difference in the mind of the authoritarian between criticism and enemy. So I'm an enemy. You're an enemy. Anyone who votes for Kamala Harris is an enemy now of Donald Trump. And his enemies list is a long list. And the consequences of his reelection aren't just for those personal things for the people on that list. They're to the republic. They're to the constitutional order. They're to the American rule of law. None of those things survive a reelection of Donald Trump. Now, look, I've been on this list for a long time. And for 9 years, I've gotten death threats. My family's gotten death threats. You know, we're literally dealing with one this morning while I record this. And I've always said this, 99% of these assholes are just online jerk-offs talking shit. Okay? 99% of them you just dismiss. But this is a scaled problem. And when there's 1,000 of these death threats, that means 100 of them could be real. You have to deal with them. And these people want to be let off the chain. They want to be told by Trump, just like they did on January 6th, go get them. I will give credit to the New York Times today for putting Donald Trump on absolute blast about these violent threats. And other media have been very attentive to this story. It is not rhetoric. It is not some game. It is not some bullshit. And it's only a part of the spectrum of the threats to come. Look, the lawfare stuff we all know is going to happen if Trump is reelected. His attorney general will not be Bill Barr. I mean, when he asked Bill Barr to go after me and the Lincoln Project, even Bill Barr said no. Even Bill frickin' Barr said, nah, that's too much, bro. The DOJ will be weaponized, and every one of its tools of investigation and prosecution will be applied against Trump's political enemies. He is not here to protect the country. He is here to go after his enemies. And if you believe that you can get away with criticizing him, you cannot. If you believe you can get away with disagreeing with him, you cannot. And if, like Mitch McConnell and Mike Johnson and some of the more establishment types still lurking around D.C., you believe that you could slow roll him if he's president again, or resist him, or not implement what he wants immediately, you too will find yourselves on this list. You too will find yourselves under the gun, either metaphorically or literally. And look, guys, I wish I was exaggerating. I wish this was hyperbolic. I wish this was a broad brush thing, but it's just not anymore. It's just not. I was in New York for fundraising this week, because that's all I do these days, and a speech. And first night I was there, I was having dinner at a restaurant, and I'm sitting outside. It's beautiful early fall night, and this couple comes up, and I get this a lot. It's a weird thing. It's like, oh, you're Rick Wilson of the Lincoln Project. I'm like, yes, I am. They both had a German accent. I was like, well, how nice to meet you. And they told me their story. They'd come over from Germany in the early 1990s after the wall came down, and they love America, and they've become American citizens, and they fully lived that American dream. They had a successful life here. We're retired now. And the man asked me a question that he goes, can I ask you something? I'm like, sure. It was a question I did not anticipate. He said, it wasn't the, or will we win or lose question. That's what people ask me the most. Are we going to win this election? Are we going to lose? And I said, go, sure. He goes, how long do you think they let you live after Trump is reelected? It really struck me. It really struck me, because I'm not the most important critic of Donald Trump in the world. but I sure am on his radar. There are a lot of people who should think about that question, including people who are his hypothetical allies right now. They should think about that question. How long does he let you live after he's reelected? You know, show me a country that's governed by authoritarians and dictators where people have legitimate freedom of speech. Show me a country governed by authoritarians and dictators where there's legitimate free market capitalism. Show me a country where you can pass wealth on to your children, where there's not free market, constitutional democracy of some kind. There isn't. What he's doing when he says these things, it's not a show. Part of it is to signal to his audience and to signal to the people that will implement his vision. And by the way, I will say this again, if you think Project 2025 is dead or that it's not his game plan, watch what happens the day after he's elected and the people that wrote it are all put into government positions to implement it for him. But he's signaling this excess to his audience, to his people. And pretty soon, by the way, you're going to hear this one. If people do react and they want to protect me from the Marxist communist dictators on the left and they do something, I'll pardon them. Watch that. He's going to say that very soon. Why do you think he keeps mentioning pardoning the January 6 terrorists? He's sending a signal. And, Trump has a cozy, warm blanket now of immunity from the Supreme Court. And if you don't think that he and his lawyers understand that, you are mistaken. Let's go back one more time to the top. He's saying he's going to use the United States military to pursue, arrest, punish, and execute, in the case of General Milley and probably many others, his political enemies. If you do not understand this yet, if you still think it's a joke or if you still think it's part of the act or the shtick or the bullshit, and he gets reelected, watch your back. Because it's not just people like me that are out front, tip of the spear. It's not just people like us at the Lincoln Project who are hitting him in the face every day. You're going to see the most dark and terrifying chapter in the history of this country if he's reelected. I'm not exaggerating, not putting too fine a point on the thing. Take him for his word and the people around him at their word. They are eager for this. They crave this. They know something about this. Their vision is a post-constitutional, post-democratic America. They'll keep the American branding, the flags, the eagles, the beautiful buildings in Washington. But it won't be the country that we grew up in. It will be a country governed by fear and authoritarianism and suppression and statism. None of this is conservative. None of this is American, but it's all Donald Trump. Thanks, folks.